Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. How are you doing, sir?
Oh man, I'm blessed. Yeah.
It's an honor to have you on my show, The Rematch, and have you be a part of my book. I'm using a portion of this for my book. It's interesting because I've been reading about you since high school. And, I wrote an article that came out this morning in The Guardian, and I talked about you and Craig Hodges and the sacrifices that you all had to make for players like Draymond Green and like LeBron and Steph Curry and all the players to be able to speak so freely. But I think it's important to remember the ones that came before us. And that's why I wanted to honor you with that article. So I appreciate everything that you've always stood for and the sacrifices that you've made, so that myself can have the ability while I was playing to be able to speak freely. So I just wanted to thank you for that before we even get started.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Yeah.
Definitely. So, there's a lot I want to talk to you about. And a lot of it's interesting, even from the article, a lot of people are asking, specific questions and things of that nature of what happened. And I don't know how much we have to go into the details of everything, but I think that one thing that's interesting as we talk about this notion of what the flag means to different people and what the symbolism means. And I want to read this part because this was a part I did an interview with Phil Chenier. I don't know if you remember Phil Chenier. And we were talking about, from the Wizards. That's my guy. And we were talking about the national anthem. It came back into the news. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I was like, yeah, but do you remember that third verse that they took out? And he was like, no, I don't. What do you mean? I was like, oh, yeah, you have to look at that because then that'll open your eyes to what the original intent of the Star Spangled Banner was. So I want to read the third verse. Mm-hmm. So it said, no refuge. Now this verse was in there and then they took it out. Right. That's all right. So it says, no refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, and God is our trust. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Now, I remember reading that in high school, and I was like, what the devil is that? Why are we still singing this? Why am I supposed to honor this? So what I started doing was, I was just learning about John Carlos and Tommy Smith and everything. So I started doing the Black Power salute. And everybody that remembers me playing in Booker T. Washington High School, that's what I did during the national anthem. And then I read about you. And then I read about the reaction of you when you said the words, you said, you can't be for God and for oppression. Mm-hmm. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. That's right. No matter what religion you are, you can't be for both. So talk to me a little bit about what the flag means to different people and how you interpreted that. Because honestly, I think there's only one way to interpret what I just read from the third verse. I don't think there's any other interpretation that you can have. But talk to me about what the flag represented.
Well, first, man, I'm glad you read that because as you was reading it, the thought that came to my mind was, it doesn't matter if they deleted the third stanza or not. They never deleted the way they treated us, right? And the policies, that affected us. So not having it in there never really changed the way we were perceived and the way we were treated historically. So we don't need it. We don't words. When it's all said and done, there's a saying that what you are speaks so loudly in my ears that I can hear words you say. Emerson said that, and so really actions speak louder than words. But to answer your question, Etan, man, yes, it means so many different things. to a lot of people. I think as it relates to whether you're talking about African Americans, whether you're talking about just people of color, whether you're talking about the Native Americans, our perception of it is quite different than if you're talking about a European American, you know, who reap many of the benefits that this country offers, not to everyone. You know, they have a leg up. There's this sense of entitlement that exists in this country that's been here from its beginning. So for a lot of us, when we think of the flag, and yes, we know that there's always a mixture of good and bad in society. It can never just be totally bad because it wouldn't last.
Right.
You have to be very sophisticated and creative how you navigate and how you manage these things. But I would just say that for many of us, or the people that I know and talk to, when we think of the flag, or if you're talking to a Native American or a Native, we think of phrases like sexism. We think of terrorism. We think of racism. Right? These are the things that come to our mind. We think of militarism. Right? We think of imperialism. There's so many words that comes to mind when you think of it, and that's the way I began to think. When I was in the league, I began to read more. I began to be introduced to a lot of material that I never had access to. Well, I'm not going to say had access to, but I didn't have access to at the time. And those things, learning about what's happening globally and domestically, like really opened my eyes. That, man, we have and you knew it already, but I couldn't necessarily put my finger on it. I couldn't articulate it. But the more you read in these books, whether it's by Noam Chomsky, whether it's by Randall Robinson, you know, Randall Robinson said something that still resonates with me. He said, never before in history have millions of people been deprived of everything except respiratory function. Language, religion, culture, mothers, fathers, you know, we've been deprived of those things. And he said and he said even genitalia, and he said still considered menaces to society. And so this is something that has been with us from time immemorial, man, and until things change, I think many of us will continue to see it that way. And no amount of hoorah speeches, you know, soft words will change that, because it's about what's happening on the ground and how we're being affected.
And the audacity of somebody trying to fault you for seeing what it, you know, I mean, when you read the third verse, it is quite clear. Like, there should be no other discussion.
Yeah.
But then for somebody, and I'm going back to when you were playing in '96, and you explained it, but it's like people heard something different. And just so honestly, and I'm gonna say it, you know, as bluntly as possible, for a white person to look at a black person and say that I don't understand why you don't look at this Star Spangled Banner and this national anthem the same way that I do, I think is absolutely ridiculous. You know, for him to look at a Native American person or a Native and say the same thing, and say that you should be required to stand at attention and put your hand on your heart, and, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
Knowing the history. It'd be different if you didn't know the history, but you know the history.
Yeah. But that's the thing too. I think a lot of people, I forget her name, man. She said, we don't have I wish I had it in front of me, but it's somewhere down the lines of, there are some people, man, that really they know their version of history. And if that's all that you're being fed, and even if you're being fed that, you know, and you come across Native Americans were here, and you have to engage, and you have to ask these questions, you know what I mean? Like, dig a little deeper, but not everybody's willing to do that. So there are some people that don't necessarily know, but I think the majority of them do know. And I think she said something down the lines of, we don't have a not knowing problem. We have a not, because many of us know we have a not doing problem or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's absurd, man, Etan, that, and this is another thing too, I think, that exists. People are constantly being fed this sense of America is an exceptional nation. And there's a great book called American Exceptionalism and American Innocence, because this is constantly what's being pushed, that American is exceptional, it's unique, nothing like it. And at the same time, everything by and large that America does is from a position of innocence. Like, you made a mistake, it wasn't intentional. It didn't mean to enslave you.
Right.
It didn't mean to come and bomb your country into the next galaxy.
Right.
We wanted to bring democracy and freedom to you. We wanted to do this. And so it's always if this is constantly what you're being fed, and if you're constantly reaping the benefits, and I'm specifically talking about, by and large, European culture. If you're constantly receiving the benefits, you're going to perceive America as this great nation. That's the way you're going to see it until you come on our side of the track.
Right.
And you have to go through black like me.
Right.
And you live that experience, even if you had to paint yourself black and live that experience, you always can escape it and go back. We can't.
Right.
So and it's amazing, that people have the audacity to utter these things, but it comes from a conditioning. It comes from an education. They're confident in saying it because this is their experience. This is their knowledge base. And some of them, like you said, know it, and it's just an arrogance. Like, how dare you not appreciate what we've given you? Don't man.
It's just amazing. And when you talked about the education part, because they're in the education system, from the time that they're in kindergarten, they're taught that they're of white supremacy, pretty much from kindergarten. They're taught, but they're taught things that they know are not true. Like, say, for instance, Christopher Columbus discovered America, even though people were already here.
Of course.
But they said that they discovered it.
Yeah.
And the way that they refer to the natives as savages but that's teaching white supremacy from a young age, and then it just builds on from there. So you're told you're better, you're superior, from a young age. And then people now, it's interesting when you hear people say, like, we don't know how we can uproot this racism, where it came from. And I'm like, y'all been taught it since kindergarten.
Yeah, there's a book, man. It's called The White Architects of a Black Education. And he made a statement that was so profound. And he said that in justifying colonialism, we can add, in justifying white supremacy and justifying all of these things, they use the textbook as often as the bullet. And this is something that, like we were talking about before, even with whites, they're being duped, right?
Right.
This concept of white supremacy, of allowing these things to take place. There's a saying that what you concentrate on grows, or what you allow continues.
That's right.
And so, of course, education and being informed, man, and engaging the issues is so critical. But unfortunately, not a lot of people do that. And not a lot of people feel they have the time with the society that we live in, man, the work schedule and all that's thrusted upon us. But, this stuff has been happening, man, from the beginning. You know what I mean? Even a lot of the things that existed then, we have these conversations a lot, even about slavery. There's a thing called Slavery by Another Name. And the book that the sister wrote, The New Jim Crow.
Michelle Alexander.
These things, the faces have changed, but so many things remain the same. If you have 1% to 2%, 3%, even if it was 5% of the majority of the wealth controlled by 1%, 2%, 3% of the people, right? And that's been that way for years. And you got all of these. You look at the prison industrial complex, all of these things. You look at the cost of living, the minimum wage, and who suffers more. You look at the generational wealth gap. They said that it would take maybe 200 and something years for a middle-class black family to match economic parity with a middle-class European family. Explain to me how things have changed. Explain to me why, look at the health industry. Your third leading cause of death in America is by people using FDA-approved drugs and going to the hospital, right? And mostly everything else is associated with health. Almost every facet of life, we can find major corruption. Right. And major death, and it's like, what is it about this country that's exceptional? Right. Black man, we're usually in all of those categories. We're the ones that suffer the most every time from the beginning to now. So these are the things that upsets me, when I think about these symbols, because symbols can't be can't be separated from, especially if you're using this symbol as a representation of the nation, right? So that symbol has to be targeted.
Right.
If you say this symbol represents us and it stands for this, and for many of us it doesn't, you can't blame us for attacking that symbol.
Right.
Sometimes that's the only thing we have or we feel we have to attack. A lot of us don't have the confidence, and we're not going to be invited to Congress. We're not invited. So we're angry, we're upset, we're reaching for straws. You know what I mean? We're reaching for, a life vest that doesn't seem to come in the time that we need it for the most part. So it's ignorance, it's arrogance, it's a whole bunch of stuff mixed in there when people attack you for taking a position, even using a flag, even you hear people, and I may be going off on a tangent, you hear people saying, well, I ain't talk about the military, right? Military is, look, man, all of these arms are connected. The military is not a safe bet. The military, why do you think America's in the position that it's in now? Even the police, and I know I think we may forget it. I don't want to jump the gun, but
we'll get to that.
We can deal with and talk about that. It's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Talk to me about my position on a flag,
right?
And then even that, you trying to switch the debate and make it about the flag. No, let's talk about policies. Let's talk about condition.
Right.
That's just what I'm using to get your attention to deal with these things. Let's not make it about the flag. That's minor compared to all the other stuff.
And it's interesting. I remember being in high school and asking, why would we even, and I say we, I'll talk about America, why would America even use that same song? Like why wouldn't they create, if they were truly repentive, if they were truly, why wouldn't they create a new song, talk about and recognize the sins of the past, not just skip over them like they never happened, but recognize and have a complete atonement for the sins of the past in the song, and talk about moving forward collectively, or something like, why would you use the same song that has the lyrics specifically of a slave? And that was just mind-boggling to me.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, even after this became public, because a lot of people didn't know.
Right.
There should have been major talk about, we need to come up with something else.
Yes.
To where, but even then, the argument with us would be, when it's all said and done, man, we don't want your songs.
Right.
We want change.
Right.
We don't want change. As Dr. Harriet would say, not all change leads to progress.
Right.
Change that leads to progress.
Right.
Because you've said things to us since we've been here on the shores. And a lot of what you say to us is just double talk. You contradict yourself. It doesn't really follow. Yeah, you give us tokenism. You give us bits and pieces to where we think that we're moving ahead. But in all actuality, we're not really moving ahead. You can't prop up Oprah, and you can't prop up these few billionaires. That's a example of all of us.
Right.
Right. We all want to eat. We all want to live. No, we don't want to survive. We want to live. And right now we're surviving.
Right.
And if America is so rich and so prosperous and so enlightened and all of these things, why are we still dealing with these issues of racism, of the poverty level? What, 40 something or 50 million people don't have health insurance. Can't afford. You got to make these difficult choices. I mean, almost every corner, people's blood is being sucked.
Right.
And so it's so we don't want the songs. I mean, yeah, change it. It sounds good, but we want policies. We want progress.
I agree. It's interesting. Talking to my daughter, Imani, she's 13 years old. And I remember a few years ago, she asked me this question. She said, well, she saw Trump with the Make America Great Again slogan. She was like, what time in particular are they talking about? Now she's 13 now, so that was a few years ago. She's learning history, and she's seeing. She was like, "What specific time are they talking about when it was great? And are we included in that time period when it was great, because it wasn't never great for us. So she's like, it couldn't have been slavery. It couldn't have been segregation. It couldn't have been like, what part of and what time are they referring to? Now, this is a 13-year-old girl asking this.
I know you're being humble, and you said she's reading history, but she's growing up in your household.
That's true. That's true. That's true. No, she is. She is.
But it's
So let me ask you this: when that happened, going back to 1996, and this is the thing about it is 1996 wasn't that long ago. It's not like we're talking about going back to the 60s when it's like black and white TV and we fight for segregation. This is 1996. I was in high school. You know what I mean? You came up with a compromise and said that you were going to stand and pray a silent prayer during the national anthem, and people still had an issue with that.
Still weren't happy. I mean, Kaepernick kneels, not happy. You know what I mean? They just find reasons just to argue and to not be happy and to be disgusting. But yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know the question you asked me. I kind of lost.
No, it's just amazing to me that even with that at that time period, I want you to describe the level of hatred that you was bombarded with at that time, because people kind of gloss over it. They think of it was just maybe a little bit. It was a tremendous amount, and this was even before social media. Yeah, we didn't have social media then. Yeah. You know what I mean? But the level of hatred that you received after that, because you basically said that, well, this is a symbol of white supremacy, which it is and has historically been. That wasn't a opinion; those are facts. Right. But they didn't like you saying those facts. So talk about the level of hatred that you received from that.
Oh man, I mean, you saw it represented in the media. You saw it represented in the newspapers. I received a lot of death threats as a result of it. A lot of hate mail, and as you said, which is very important, that should be brought to people's attention, which Dr. Harry Edwards brought it to mind in a way that I didn't even think about, which is why he's considered who he is and the scholar that he is. But he said, Mahmoud, he said, and he wasn't trying to knock anybody at all, but he was just making the point that because we didn't have social media, it changed things, the dynamic of how things turned out. And on top of that, he said, when you did what you did and Craig did what he did, he said, it was different than when Kaepernick and Muhammad Ali did what they did. So what do you mean? He said, because during those times they had a movement to attach it to, the Black Power movement, Kaepernick, right. The Black Lives Matter movement. He said, when you did what you did and Craig, there was no movement to attach it to. So you guys were like on an ocean without a paddle all by yourself. Mm-hmm. And the media and people could frame the issue the way they wanted to. Mm. And that's what began, because even with my issue, it was, they try to make my drive or my striving for justice strictly about, well, that's just for Muslims.
Right.
They try to personalize it. And so I was like, wow, that's deep. I never thought about it like that. And so social media during my time, they didn't have it, as you said. And so the media could control the narrative, can frame it easier the way they want, even though I'm sure the letters and the hate mail that I was getting, mm-hmm. they were also receiving. I mean, no, not receiving. And no, let me go back. I also received a lot of support mail.
Okay.
Jews, Christians, mm-hmm. atheists, agnostics, Muslims agreeing with the position. I mean, I had so many. So as I had a lot of hate mail, I also had a lot of support mail.
Okay.
But because there was no social media, the media can just focus on more so mm-hmm. the hate, mm-hmm. right? Tyranny, oppression. Who did this guy think he is? Mm-hmm. Making billions of dollars. How can he talk about oppression? Well, how can you as a politician talk about it when you understand and talk about poverty and all this other stuff? So those things for me, that's what that I think that was the major difference when I did it, and as Dr. Harry Edwards was saying. Mm-hmm. they could control that. They can say, you know, we're going to focus on this. We're not going to show all the people, all different religious persuasions, ethnicities, and cultures that think the same thing. This is not what they, you know, want the world to see, that so many people, if you really give them a voice and listen to them, most people, even a lot of white people that's used as a buffer between the rich and us, right? Get the jobs to do this, literally, many people would say the same thing. Like, America has serious issues and problems, but this is not the story they want to tell. But it was serious, man, to the point where, and I'm not proud to say this, but I ended up having to go to the hospital twice because, you know, I'm trying to process it. I'm angry. I'm listening to all of these diatribes, you know, being mentioned and epithets being used. And I'm saying to myself, you know, I just wanted to go out, man, swinging. I'm listening to people that I trust and I value their opinion, and I'm processing it all. And so I'm sitting trying to think things through. And in the process of doing that, I went to the hospital twice because I had ulcers.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and they had to put IVs in me and everything. And but it was constant for that time. And you know, you still get it, but it was serious. It was serious anger and hate, man. And even at the games, people come into the games and they're talking about their love for the anthem. And while the anthem is, they're too busy booing me and disrespecting the anthem. Wow.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of contradictions going on. Yeah.
They were booing you while you were praying, but they were booing during the anthem.
Exactly. and I'm sitting there, man. I'm like, man, y'all are just
good Lord.
Characters, man.
You know, I remember I'm in high school watching all of this, but I'm seeing it. I remember them trying to pit you and Akeem Olajuwon against each other. Yeah. Now, and I saw this. Now, they went to Akeem Olajuwon and they said, well, what is your interpretation of this? Do you think? And he said a lot, but they took a little bit of the part that he said, you know, but he did not knock you. He said, I respect him, but they took all that part out. They just said, well, Akeem Olajuwon said that he sees it this way and he's Muslim, so Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf has to be wrong. Yeah. Am I incorrect in my interpretation of what happened?
No, you're absolutely right, man. And I wasn't falling for it. Hakeem wasn't falling for it. There were a lot of people who did, even among the Muslim crowd. Man, how could he? I said, listen, man. I said, I don't, and I never heard the whole thing, but Hakeem and my relationship had never shifted and changed. Got massive love for each other, but I would tell them, I said, listen, you know, you can't just go off of what the media presented. They have a history of chopping things up, not showing things in its full context. I said, but even if that statement, he was like, okay, what that statement was said outside of something else, even if I disagree of following the law of the land and respecting, you know, I don't use that word respect lightly. You know, we're quick to throw the word, well, we can disagree with something, right? We can not think that it's good. Well, I respect your decision. No, I understand your decision. Right. I don't respect it.
Yes.
I don't have to respect it, but I can understand why you do what you do. So I said, even if I don't agree with him, you know, there's a saying that, you know, you learn to agree to disagree as long as it's not rooted in my oppression.
Right.
So we move on. Alhamdulillah, you know, and so that's the way I looked at it. I said, well, I don't agree with that one based upon what my understanding of what Allah says. He didn't put two hearts in the human being. You can't be for God and oppression at the same time.
Right.
And so many other verses, but I understand, you know, how a person can feel that way.
But, you know, I just thought it was interesting. You know, I'm reading Malcolm X and he's, you know, saying how, you know, the first thing that happens when a black man stands up on his principles or something, and the first thing the white man does is to go get it. You know what I'm talking about? I'm paraphrasing, but he said the first thing the white man does is get another black face to go and offset what that black man just said.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Akeem Olajuwon. They went straight to Akeem Olajuwon. They tried to get, but then they twisted what he said. And they omitted and it, you know, shaped, and then they wanted to present it like this. And it's just amazing to see it happen in real time.
Yeah, but for us, a lot of us who are constantly in the beautiful, and some of us still get tricked, but a lot of us who are constantly interviewed as athletes, who are constantly interviewed. How many times have we gone and read an interview that we gave, whether it's in writing, on television, and it was butchered?
Yes.
So for us, you know, we don't jump. If if you're intelligent, you say, hold on, nah. They have a history of cutting.
Right.
I'm gonna wait till I talk to him.
Right.
And for myself, I'm not going to come to conclusions. Or even if I'm on camera, I'm going to find a way to definitely not condemn him. I say, well, listen, I haven't talked to Hakeem. I haven't heard all of what he had to say. Like I'm telling you, even if that's what he said and nothing else, this would be my position, but it's not going to affect my relationship.
Yeah, and the media is very good at that, at pitting people against each other. I mean, I experienced it when I was playing with the Wizards. You know, every athlete has experience where the media at least has tried to, or they successfully pitted them against each other, one or the other. It definitely happens. I want to ask you something else. You know, David Stern, his reaction to you and treatment of you after that whole thing happened in '96. I know, and people speak about people in, let's say, glowing terms after, they're either gone or in retrospect, and they kind of leave out certain parts of it. I thought that when I'm watching George W. Bush now, and they're talking about him, and I'm like, do y'all remember everything that he did back in the day, or are we just gonna skip over all that and forget it? But I want to ask specifically about David Stern and how his reaction was to you after that happened and the conversations that you all had, and if he was willing to even listen to your point of view or anything, or what exactly happened.
Etan, David Stern and I never had a conversation.
Wow. And I'm still, my mind is still blown that he never had an actual conversation to hear your, just to actually have a man-to-man, human-to-human conversation to hear your thought and your, opinions, your beliefs and everything like that. I honestly, I don't know. I guess I just read it that y'all had a conversation, and I assumed it to be true that y'all had one. I don't know, Etan, if some people, man, I've never been this way. I look at a person. I don't get caught up in person's labels. I get caught up in, I listen to you and I observe your conduct. Those things match, and it resonates with me. Man, we can talk and hang out and spend time with you. We don't have to agree with everybody. As long as you're not practically, physically doing things and adopting policies that will physically affect me and the human being. If it's just a theoretical difference, like you believe, for example, you believe in the Trinity, I don't. Right.
But you're not trying to create policies that are going to oppress me.
Right.
I'm not going to allow that to stop me. Look, let's go shoot some pool. Let's go.
Yeah, right.
We're still talking. Hey, no two people are going to agree on everything.
Of course.
Right. And man, I lost my train. What was I just saying?
No. You was talking about how that if you have no problems having conversations with people, but then when you're using what you believe to oppress you, that's a totally different thing.
Right. So I don't know if David Stern, some people could, for public perception, say we get along with each other, or I don't have a problem, but I really don't know if it was a Muslim thing. I don't know. I can't say, and I'm not going to say it because I can't talk to him now. He's not here.
Right.
But you do question that, because let's face it, even with, you're a Christian, right? If you end up in the NBA doing what AC Green did, where AC Green was like verbalized it. I mean, AC Green, if you sat and talked to him, he would probably tell you, yeah, I was treated a little differently, right? Because when you wear it, when you speak it, it's a whole nother ball game. Right. And you don't. So I don't know if it's because I ended up becoming one of those that I didn't follow or do the mainstream thing. I wanted to wear my faith. I wanted to express it. It wasn't just, I'm not a closet Muslim. I'm not a closet. I hate to use these terms in a way because I want to limit myself. I'm not a closet social activist. You know what I mean?
Right.
I gotta say, I'm gonna say it. So I really don't know if that was, really, man, a part of it or not, of why he didn't want to talk to me and have dialogue with me. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Wow, that's really interesting. You know, but I don't think it was
myself and for example, Dave Zirin.
Oh, okay, right.
Jewish.
Yeah, that's my guy. He actually told me to tell you hi when I told him that I was interviewing you.
Look.
Yeah.
I love Dave.
Yeah, that's our guy.
And I'm sure if we sat and talked, we're not going to agree on everything.
Right.
His passion, his intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get caught up in it. One of my agents, Keith Glass, was Jewish.
Right.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't. It's not that. Sometimes people make it to be something that is not. Exactly. And it's just because David Stern has issues with me as well. I mean, I was part of the negotiating committee for the Player Association, so we've gone actually to war at the negotiating table during the lockouts a few times, and he didn't like the positions that I took and the way that I challenged him and the rest of the CEOs. You know, I don't call them owners for obvious reasons. They call them governors now, but the way that I challenged them. So he had his own, you know, personal feelings about me as well. You know, and then also when I was here with the Wizards, I was speaking against the war in Iraq. Now, at a time where I'm in DC, at that time, like now, if you talk about Iraq, you know, Republicans and Democrats will both say, okay, yeah, we probably shouldn't have gone in there. But at that time, you know, the only public figures that was talking about Iraq was like the Dixie Chicks and like Michael Moore and a few other people. So he wasn't that crazy about me speaking out. So it wasn't the Muslim thing. It was just doing something out of the scope of what he feels should be done by athletes. And I do really, you know, Adam Silver is different. You know, I had a chance to interview Adam Silver, and I asked him specifically, and I asked him this question. I interviewed him for the book We Matter, but I also interviewed him for my podcast, The Rematch, and I asked him, you know, under your watch, would you have punished Craig Hodges or Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf? I asked him that point blank. And he said, I didn't see anything that they did that needed to be punished. He talked about how Craig Hodges came respectfully, you know, and gave a letter. He's like, I don't know what could be more respectful than that. He talked about you standing there praying. So it was interesting. So different. Adam Silver is different than David Stern. But I do think that the NBA still, now this is just me talking. This is my personal opinion. I do think that the NBA needs to have some type of recognition as to what happened to you. Recognition and reconciliation. Both of those as to what happened with you and Craig Hodges in particular. Now, this is just me speaking. That is my personal opinion. I think that is what needs to happen. You don't need to comment on that. I'm just saying that's what I feel. And, you know, for the sacrifices that you all made and what you all stand for in the history of activism, and as you see all these players right now, you see LeBron James, you see Draymond Green just recently, Steph Curry, all the players using their voices and being praised for it. And there needs to be, you know, we need to go back to the players that were whiteballed from the league because of the fact of what they did. I don't think you could just skip over that. But again, don't even comment on that. This is just me talking. I don't even want you to comment on it. Don't say nothing about it. This is just I'll just take that position, and this is what I said. So not just one. So all right. So I don't want to keep you too long, but I want to ask you 2 basketball questions, and then I'll let you go. 2 basketball questions. One, you and Shaq, you know, as teammates, one of the greatest duos that I can even say ever. Talk about that relationship and how special you two really were working together. You know what I mean? Because sometimes people forget, like y'all were on a whole different level. Talk about that dynamic that y'all had and how special it was as a duo.
Well, let me just say this, man. We were young, and you know, I just came off of a freshman 30.2 season. And, you know, he's coming in as a McDonald's All-American. Stanley redshirted the first year. Now you had another 7.2 guy coming in, you know, and so, you know, there was this talk that I'm going to have to share the ball more and numbers are going to drop drastically. And it ended up being that I was probably like almost 2 points off of doing the same thing with the year with him. One thing I'll say about Shaquille, is, and you know, when you're in college, man, you already know. I don't know. Each school and team may be different, but you have people that you gel with, you hang out with a little bit more than others, but you're still a team. But like myself, Vernell, and Stanley hung out more.
Okay.
Shaquille may have hung out more, but when we played against, when we practiced together, when we were on the planes, everybody
was right.
You just have people that you click with naturally more than others.
Right.
But I'll say this about Shaquille, man. He said something when he was in college that I look back on when he got to the league, and I said, man, he had some foresight on that one. He told me once, going into the shower, he said, I'm going to be the first player to make 80, 90 million on a contract. And he made well over that. But he just had Etan, he had a viciousness about him. Like he didn't want to be put into a box. You know, that's why he get it and he bring it up court. He throw passes.
Right.
He had an attitude when he played, and I think that attitude. And I'm not saying a negative attitude. He had an attitude of just wanting to be great.
Right.
And wanting to dominate, wanting to strike fear in you, take your heart away, and that did well for us. You know, it did well for him over the course of not just being at LSU, but the course of his NBA career. I started off by saying we were young because with all of that talent that we had, we still weren't able to pull it through. And you can have all the talent in the world, and you could have the best design, and if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But I think for us, it was an issue at times because you got all of these players because Stanley was more skilled than Shaquille. Shaquille had more like a fire in him than Stanley. Both of them want the ball.
Right.
I want the ball.
Right.
but without, and I'm not knocking Dale in this context, but we weren't able to, in that short period, not just define in a way that people could say, okay. I mean, for me, it was perfect because I'm doing the same thing.
Right.
Because Dale didn't see in Shaquille that he had that offensive ability to demand, you know, that he later on became. He wasn't Shaquille rather didn't have that offensive ability, but he was notorious, you know, and relentless. On the flip side, Stanley did, but Stanley didn't always want to play.
Okay, gotcha.
So in light of that, he's like, Mahmoud, we need you to do what you've been doing.
Right.
So that's why I had to keep the scoring going. But if we would have had that roles defined, and more importantly, buying into the roles, like being able to understand, look, let's be mature about this, man.
Right.
Look, where you need to be. I need to do this. Get you in your places. Let's make this work. I think we could have definitely won. But because we didn't have that, that's what messed us up. Okay. We were immature. We were young. He was like, man, trick that. And then you had people talking about, man, forget it, man. I want to leave. I want to go to the league. So your mind is in other places.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was man. Yeah, he was. And he at that time he was like cut.
Right.
And still bigger than pretty much everybody.
Yeah. All right. And so last question, you know, I a lot of comparisons of you and Steph Curry. And, you know, I wanted to see your evaluation of Steph Curry as a player. Do you see some of you in him? You know, yes, he's this incredible shooter, creating distance, being able to get a shot off over, you know, defenders, no matter how they double, triple team him. A lot of you in him, to be quite honest. What do you see?
There's definitely similarities, man. He has a quick release. He can get his shot off, coming off screens, coming off pick and rolls. He can ISO you. So that's one of the things I prided myself on. He's got me about 3 inches, you know, but he, he's just a phenomenal man. He's phenomenal. He has phenomenal control with the rock. And again, his ability to not just get his shot off in different scenarios, but also finish at the goal. Definitely a lot of similarities. But the game, I just say to people that the game has changed. Now, if you're talking about quickness and speed, I definitely believe I have him on the quickness, part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But and probably even athletic side of it, because I don't think he can even. He's not like real fluent with his dunks, right?
I got you.
but no, man. Everything else, man. There's a lot of similarities with him and I. The game is different though. Now they are looking to shoot bombs.
Mm-hmm.
They have like a fluorescent light.
Mm-hmm.
We came up, no matter how great, now unless you were Isaiah Thomas or something like that, but even still, or Michael Jordan, you're going through Michael, you're going through Isaiah. But most of the teams, a lot of times, still, you got to go through the big man, like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You got to run it through them. Now, the big man, to some degree, is almost the old school big man is obsolete.
Obsolete, yeah, dinosaur.
Right. So when you go in the game and man, look, when you were coming up, you didn't get to where you got to without having some enormous games. Right. And those enormous games that you had, the goal looked like this because you ain't have nobody over your back telling you can just play.
Right.
So you actually can come out and there's no range, hardly nothing out of your range. You don't have anybody over your shoulders. You can shoot the ball pretty much anywhere on the court almost.
Right.
If you want to, you can now you can hold it and you can dance with it for a long period of time. Yeah. It's just a different game. I would love to see many of us having the opportunity to do that and see how we would have done. Right. But I mean, to answer your question, definite similarities. I love watching him. But I always say too, man, and I know you're not asking in that way. I said, this is his time, and I'm just enjoying watching it.
That's great.
Because people could have looked at me and can look back and probably say, man, he reminds me of. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be comparison. Right. I'm just honored, literally, and I don't say this, loosely. I'm honored, man, just to even be mentioned in the same breath as people that came before me. Like even when they say, man, when you were coming up, when you were in high school or junior high, man, they liken you to Isaiah. I'm not gonna be like, man, I ain't no Isaiah. I'm me. Like, man, that's an honor.
Right.
Now they say, man, look, man, you know how people they want to knock the game. Yeah. There's differences, but I say, look, man, skill when you see it. Right. And it's an honor for me to even be mentioned in the same breath as these dudes. Yeah. So it's an honor. But definite similarities. Yeah. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but definite similarities.
No, I definitely see it. And what about his last question? And what about his activism and the way that he uses his voice and the way that he stands up? Yeah,
I love it. I love the position that he took with Under Armour when he came out and saying what he said about supporting Trump, and he put his foot down. Right. And he was willing to risk that huge endorsement for his principles. Mm-hmm. On top of other things that he deals with. So for me, those are bigger than the jump shots you make. Mm-hmm. When I see a guy, man, if you got skill, I'm in awe of your skill. I love it. But what attracts me to a player is when your skill or when your humility and your service matches your skill. Now I become a fan. Right. In that, I'm not a fan. Right. I like this, and this. Yeah. That's what, when I was coming up, Dr. J was my guy. Mm-hmm. Dr. J flying through the air, exciting. But really, what attracted me to Dr. J was his demeanor. How the images that I saw of how Fish to Save Pittsburgh. Right. The books that I read. The book that I read about him. Going to Connecticut and marrying Turquoise Brown and just his character. I'm like, man, this dude is humble. Yeah, it's something else. It's bigger than basketball. That's what drew me to him. On top of, if it was just there's a lot of people I enjoy watching, but I didn't follow. Like he was somebody I was looking to emulate and learn from.
Right.
That's bigger than basketball. So yeah, I love when I see that, man. I love it.
Well, I definitely respect you, and you are someone who I love to follow and wanted to emulate, and ever since I was reading about you in high school, reading about you and Craig Hodges in high school, so I want to thank you for everything that you have always stood for, who you are as a person, and people will be reading about you for generations to come, and those are the people, and beyond basketball. So people will be reading about you on the court, but they'll be reading about the stance that you took, the courage that it took for you, the opposition that you had to come against, all of that for generations, and that's what makes you special. So
they're going to be doing the same thing with you, with all what you're doing now, these platforms, and having all of these meetings and dialogues with the Cornell West, writing books. Yeah, man. They're going to do the same thing, if not more, with you, man. And I just want to thank you for having this opportunity, man. Continue to do what you're doing.
I appreciate it. All right. Well, stay safe. And thanks again for coming on the Rematch and for being a part of my book and for everything that you do.
Thank you.
All right.